Listen, this thing's so ridiculous, I couldn't even wait for the unboxing. I've already unboxed it. This is the EVGA 3090 Ti. What is NVIDIA thinking? This is basically the end of the product cycle, and they're coming out with the 3090 Ti. It's a little controversial because they teased it at New Year's. What day is it again? Look at the EVGA FTW3 Ultra, because this was the only one in stock that I could find. But paid MSRP, which is like $2,200, because this is a bin. Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, technically, it is a bin of a bin of a bin. The 3090 Ti is basically the 3090 on steroids. There's the two compute units that they left locked have been unlocked, and they've also juiced the clock speed. So that means this thing is going to consume 200 watts above and beyond what a 3090 would consume. That seems a little excessive. They recommend an 850 watt power supply. I'm going to recommend a 1000 watt power supply. You need a 1000 watt power supply to use this GPU with a reasonable system. If you're rocking something like a Threadripper, you're gonna need something beyond 1000 watts. We're getting into territory where, most American homes, each circuit breaker is only 15 amps at 120 volts. So we're entering the territory where you can plug in your computer, and that's pretty much the only thing that plugs into the breaker with this. It's 4 slots, and it is a little ridiculous. One thing they've done differently this generation is worry seriously about GPU sag. So in addition to having the back plate screwed into the PCB, that's all well and good, it actually sort of becomes mechanically bonded to the back plate and the support here. So the back plate is actually attached here near where the connectors are, which is 4 DisplayPort 1.4 and 1 HDMI 2.1b, as well as here. The support here acts like a triangle supporting the full length of the GPU, which really helps it not sag. But also in the box, you get not one but 2 anti-sag solutions. The first one is this. This is a retention bracket for attaching to some select chassis. So this is a solid piece of metal that will allow you to, if you have the right case, there's a QR code there, you can use this bracket. But the other more ingenious one is basically a T-clip and a wire. So I set it up in my Intel W3175X based workstation system. It's a 28 core monster system. And I screwed the cable into one of the top fans, and then there's a T-slot here on the edge of the card. So it slides right into the edge of the card, and then that supports the card from above. This is definitely the card that Batman would use. Did you notice in the Batman movies that in the Batcave, all the desks were suspended from the ceiling, like a bat hanging upside down? That was a designer that did that. It's actually very wildly impractical to have your desks dangling from the ceiling because there's no friction. They would have to be absurdly heavy because when you push on the desk or you do something or whatever, it'll want to twist, and then you have to have cables running diagonally. It'd be wildly impractical to build a new YouTube studio where you have your desks hanging from the ceiling because it was cool in the Batcave. But I digress. The EVGA aesthetic here is pretty strong, and we have a total of 7 heat pipes that you can see at the rear edge of the card. We also have a 4-pin fan header as well as a 50/50 RGB header. In addition, the micro power connector, but there's extra pins stuffed in there. But the cable that they include, which is a power breakout cable, similar to the original RTX 3090, is quite a bit different. There's an extra power plug. There's 3 this time, not 2, because, hey, extra 200 watts. But the extra pins that go along the top, there's nothing in this connector to use that. So that's for future improvement, reserved for future use kind of a thing. I think they actually intend for this little tiny connector to be able to carry a lot of different wattages. And the extra connection on the top of that is to sense, the 4000 series cards, basically, which are going to require a small fusion reactor. So the breakout cable is, of course, reasonably high quality. Also included in the box, you've got a couple of zip ties, a couple of EVGA zip ties to help you with that. I do like that they've located the power connector on the end of the card and it's smaller, and this card isn't ridiculously long. The fact that this card isn't ridiculously long will help you with airflow in your case. Plus, also, you could have a right angle adapter or something like that. I'm sure that somebody will come out with that accessory that will come off of the end and go, sort of that way. But as it is, these pigtails are long enough, which again, the original 3090, NVIDIA saved 22 cents by not making the wires a reasonable length. Good job, NVIDIA. EVGA, again, they know what they're doing. Woo! This can be hidden in behind your motherboard tray so that you've got these nice braided cables. You don't have to worry about it. EVGA knows what they're doing. You know how there's a regular and an OC switch on a lot of cards? This one's got three positions on that switch. It's OC, performance, and normal. It comes on performance, which is reasonable. OC will result in an audibly loud card, but you have an overclock profile, so you can save that. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you adjust the power slider for this to squeeze even more out of it. Trust me, EVGA has squeezed all of the silicon out that they possibly can. I do think it's interesting, as somebody who has a Founders Edition 3090, who has also had to return it for warranty service because the GDDR6X melted. I do think it's interesting that the Founders Edition of the 3090 Ti, they actually went to the trouble of moving the GDDR6 all to the same side of the PCB as the GPU. You gotta stop and think about this for a second. This is exactly the same layout. It's exactly the same silicon. It's just later in the production cycle, so they can squeeze a little bit more out of it. It's actually pretty common. You know, we have the tweaked versions that are just slightly better quality silicon. These have probably been collecting in bins for a while, even with the GPU shortages, because, you know, NVIDIA's not dumb. They're doing these kinds of things in the background. It doesn't really necessarily make sense to do a completely new PCB layout if you can avoid it. Well, in this case, they're dumping another 200 watts, so at least the power stages are going to have to be reworked. EVGA definitely leaned on their engineering prowess to come up with this card, which the PCB is the full length. But I couldn't help but notice those details on the Founders Edition card I was telling you about. They moved all the GDDR6 from the back, so all the stuff that gets hot is on the front. And EVGA already knew that with their card. They already knew that with their 3090, and they've just elevated that on the 3090 Ti to the state of the art. So I like this version of the 3090 Ti, and I don't really care for the Founders Edition of the 3090 because of the aforementioned problems. The Founders Edition of the 3090 is a 3-slot card. It's a little less than a 3-slot card. The 3090 Ti is squarely in 4-slot card territory. So these are enormous, enormous cards. Something to keep in mind for your build. Let's talk performance. So as you might imagine, I've already been off to the races with the performance on these cards. It is 5 to 10% faster in general, speaking in generalities here. It is 5 to 10% faster for 200-ish more watts of power usage. This is the fastest ampere card you can get for pretty much everything except floating point 64. Floating point 64 shouldn't matter to you unless you're a research scientist or someone that cares about floating point 64. If you want to run tensor operations on this, pretty much everything but floating point 64 seems to basically be unrestricted. So if you're thinking about this or something like an A40, if you're not running it in the data center, you can get away with running this. Now the A100, of course, is going to run circles around this for floating point 64 because the A100 is completely unrestricted for floating point 64 if that kind of thing is important to you. But for everything else, this is pretty much unmatched because 600 watts in a single card, far and away beyond what you get in the data center right now in a single GPU. So this is the absolute maximum that this platform is ever going to be able to offer. I don't think it's a particularly good deal. Don't think it's a particularly wise investment. You remember, we are at the end of a GPU cycle here. World War III, global disease situation notwithstanding, a new generation of cards is inbound. It is not unreasonable to expect that the new generation of cards will offer this level of performance probably for around $1,000, $1,200, maybe less in the next generation. So if you can get by with something that's not $2,000, you could buy, say, a $700 to $1,000 graphics card now, and then sell that one when the next ones come out for, let's say, $300 conservatively, and then put the other $1,000 or $1,000 plus $300 toward the next generation GPU, and you will be better off because you'll have a newer generation GPU that probably uses dramatically less power than 600 watts and probably faster as well. But if you have to have the absolute fastest thing that there is right now, that's this. Oh, and I almost forgot, I picked this one up at retail, but I've also got an MSI Supreme X 3090 Ti coming in to take a look at that as well. So maybe we can do maybe we could do a head-to-head with that, because I really do like the MSI Supreme X design, the 3080 and the 3090. I've got both of those. Those are really solid cards. So if you see that one and not this one, yeah, you're probably all right. I'm Wendell, this is Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums.